Thanks everyone for coming and attending this sold-out event. You're lucky to be here. I'm lucky to be here, and I'm very honoured to be sharing the stage with these three incredible artists that we're going to, I think, get to know a whole lot more about their process and indeed the friendship and the things that bind them, both from the 70s when Linda and Jenny first met, and more recently when Carla came into their world as well and into their orbit. Jenny Key and Linda Jackson are fashion royalty. They're both together and individually. They've really changed the game and created an Australian identity in fashion that we really hadn't seen before they came along. With a strong sense of curiosity, they both went overseas in the early 70s to explore as teenagers what lay beyond our shores. And then on their return home in the early 70s back to Australia, they found one another, two Australian women who viewed the world... What? We did. Oh, sorry, you just turned to each other then, didn't you? Two Australian women who viewed the world in our own backyard in a very unique way, as we see here both on the walls and in front of us, twin souls and parallel lives that they've led. Now, I'm not sure if you've heard of this. Perhaps if you're a Jenny and Linda superfan, then you know about the Flamingo Park Boutique, the very famous Flamingo Park Boutique. It was in the Strand Arcade in Sydney, which is a beautiful old arcade in the middle of the CBD. It's kind of, you know, out of time now, but in such a wonderful way, and there's some incredible shops in there. And back in the 70s, that was where their creative partnership would kick off. But the friendship, even after Flamingo Park called it a day, the friendship continued for many decades afterwards. In 2015, Carla Fletcher painted Jenny for the Archibald Prize, and a year later captured Linda in 2016. Both of those portraits were finalists in the Archibald, but today marks, as you heard, the first time ever that they've appeared in a gallery, and we're very honoured to have all three women with us as well, so please make them welcome today. Now, I first met Carla a few years ago. Carla and I are actually friends, and I met her through a mutual friend when Carla was drawing really intricate, highly realistic but monochromatic pencil drawings of Australian native fauna, beautiful pictures of koalas and kangaroos. And Carla, that work in the particular exhibition, Grey, brought you a lot of attention. It was something that you got written up in magazines and things like that. But when you first met Jenny, that really changed the way that you created, didn't you? That brought a lot of colour into your life where it hadn't been before.
Yes, I think my background was drawing. I'd studied drawing at RMIT and the fundamentals of drawing, and so that was very much the trajectory that I knew and went into my work beyond art school. But then there was, like, I had this other big compartment that I hadn't been able to express yet, which was colour. And I tried to introduce it into other portraits, but then I was sort of imposing the colour onto these other portraits, and they'd always end up being stripped back and more featuring the drawing element to my work. And then a mutual friend of mine and Jenny and Linda's, Melanie Katsalidis, has a little gallery in a contemporary jewellery gallery that Jenny did her knitwear launch, and I got an invitation, and it was the penny dropped, and I thought, well, that would be a portrait that I could explore the colour and then my drawing. So,
did you ask Jenny on the spot that day?
I did.
Did you say yes straight away, Jenny?
Your words were, "I formally accept."
Very
fabulous.
Proper. Well, it's interesting because there was similar to creative turning points in both of your lives as well, you know, many decades earlier, wasn't it? I mean, you headed to London. You literally jumped on a ship. You jumped ship from Australia and headed to London as a teenager, which must have been horrifying for your parents. But you went to work at the Chelsea markets, and that really changed the way that you saw fashion as a kind of living, breathing, flowing thing, wasn't it? An art on the body.
Well, I was working with the history of fashion. You know, it was the very first time that Granny's clothes were coming down from the attics. I mean, there was a shop called Granny Takes a Trip, and that really personified 60s London. And I was working in a tiny little space, but in that space, I was touching and wearing Fortuny, Schiaparelli, Chanel, Poiret, Mainbocher, all the greatest designers from the 20s and 30s, V&A, were in that shop, all hanging on chains, one dress after the other. Amazing. It was just an extraordinary time to have been in London, but being in London at the Chelsea Antique Market with the most amazing style guru who was from Melbourne, a Melbourne boy called Vern Lambert, and he was a walking historian, but not someone who studied history of fashion. He just enveloped himself in it, and he would shimmy with those dresses because he was very, very... he just loved to wear the dresses as well. So, the flagon of wine, the garbage bag full of these treasures, and Vern standing there at 6:30 at night in the Chelsea Antique Market is something I will never forget. It was such an extraordinary thing. That man went on to be with Anna Piaggi, who is also the greatest high-style guru, queen of fashion. She was like a walking library of artworks, fashion artworks, every day. And they too became twin souls. So I knew I was yet to meet my twin soul because that was the 60s, and it was not till I came back to Australia that I met this one. And
Linda,
it was immediate, wasn't it? Go on, you say.
You also, before we jump into that beautiful meeting, you also went overseas, and that really changed the way that you look back and framed Australia, wasn't it? You thought it more of a part of Asia than a part of Europe, as we'd been sort of grown up to believe.
Well, my parents are ballroom dancers, so my history of frock started very, very early.
Amazing.
Yeah. And doing ballet, gymnastics and things like that, we were reminiscing about South Street in Ballarat that I used to come to for the calisthenics.
Nice.
And then drawing and wanting to draw or be creative in some way early on, and being encouraged by my parents, and then starting to make my own clothes, which really for me was like at 12 or 13, wanting to be up to date and modern and things like that, I think. And then following on, meeting amazing people in Melbourne at the time, and actually you could get really amazing vintage clothing in Melbourne in those days. And I think the climate and the wealth that had been going on in Melbourne and surrounding places meant that there was some extraordinary frocks. So even over here, they might not have had those labels, but they were still... We were discovering the same things along the way, which we discovered much later, that yes, we did have those similar things. But then after I went to travel to live in New Guinea first for the year, and then travelling through the east, living in Paris, living in London, back to Thailand, and then all those countries really influenced me, the way that the women dressed in particular. And before the days, I was lucky to see the days before the whole wide world wore jeans, so that you would see people in their country in their traditional clothing, and the weaving, the embroidery, just the way that people made everything, which for me was intriguing, and I loved to see how everything was made and worn.
You come
Then
back...
you met me.
Yeah.
Get to that
No,
bit.
we...
Sorry.
No, you can, Jenny, go. I told you, jump in at any point. Derail, go crazy, give me tangents.
But we could have met. I went to the Chelsea Antique Market. I probably went several times, but we were not destined to meet.
So you actually were there at the same time?
Yeah, she loved a dress that
We
that
discussed,
girl,
yeah.
that girl went on
Hand painted, yeah.
to do hand painting, was my dear friend, but she, of all the dresses, that's the dress she went to, and it was hand painted by my friend Charlotte, and then Linda went on to use her artwork
on more frocks in the early 70s. But if
it
you're
was
not
the dress.
destined to meet, you don't meet. It's extraordinary, that. And then the minute we met in Sydney, that was it.
So when was that? What happened at that moment? Where was it? And can you remember
Jenny
the
was in
exact
Sydney.
time?
Yes, Jenny was in Sydney. I was in Melbourne, working with Clarence Chai, using vintage with the paraphernalia, making vintage things, and they had an exhibition. What was the name of the gallery? Benithan Gallery in Sydney. So up we go. I've made things out of all these 50s prints, Hawaiian prints, Jobs Warehouse, Melbourne.
Does everyone remember Jobs Warehouse?
I'm pretty sure.
Incredible
yes.
fabric store, the top of Burke Street.
So there we are, and people had said, "Oh, look, you've got to meet Jenny. She's really amazing." And well,
Ditto. Same.
ditto.
You've got to meet
We
Linda,
heard it.
she's
Yeah.
really amazing.
And then the minute she walks in and we look at each other, well, that was it. Sparks flying. The galaxy, universe changed.
Love at first sight.
Yes.
Well, it was. It was sort of it was a passionate love for the same things, but now it's a passionate love for the same things, not just in clothes and in beautiful fabrics, but our spiritual lives.
A way of life. Yeah. Family.
Live simply so others may simply live. Well, Linda really does that, and I do it too. But we share on the very deepest levels a strong and beautiful friendship.
Was there something that when you first met,
And I'd been east and she'd been west.
I know.
but you'd lived these parallel lives?
Yes.
And here I am, half Chinese. And Linda had all these magazines on China and
Chinese
she knew
opera
everything about
costumes.
China. And all I wanted was like the 30s Vogues. We just used to pore over magazines together and, ideas just flashing.
And being inspired by Australia, like forget about the rest of the world. We both saw our country as being a very extraordinary place. And being in Sydney, the blue sky, the bright colours.
Yeah, but we arrived at that time when, the creative nation had started, Whitlam was in, and the energy that was in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Australia, but we just shared that, and it was the beginning of the film industry. It was the beginning of so many things. But Linda and I, we were just immersed in a bubble, and it was a bubble of creative, beautiful Australian inspiration.
And inspiring each other and firing off each other and dressing up and...
But walking in the bush with her, something else, darling.
What happens when you walk in the bush with Linda?
Oh, there's a face in every tree, or 10 faces in every tree. Then you're up in the sky and the clouds are all faces and dolphins, and it's just like a full experience. And then you find a little dead bat, and Linda, her caring of animals in nature is something. It's such an inspiration to go walking in the bush with her, and she turned me on to the Australian bush. I was a Bondi girl.
I was
Morris, by the sea, but the bush. So
from Beau Morris to Bondi.
We were both beach babes. In our differences, the Bondi and the Beau Morris.
And you went bush. Beach babes go bush.
Yeah.
Sounds like a film. Not that kind of film, though.
Yeah.
I want to jump into some of the reflections of the environment on you, but just on what you touched on there, Jenny, about that period. For anybody who lived through it the first time, I'm sure there's plenty of people in the room who lived through the Whitlam era, but plenty of others who weren't even born at that time. It was a period where we really did discover, our own identity, and then we were sort of separating from the mother country. What did that actually mean as a creative? Because politics always plays a huge part in art and in the stories that we tell through our art. What did it actually mean in terms of the way that he was leading the country for you?
Opera house dresses, koala jumpers. You say more, darling, because I don't want to be the only one talking today.
No, but the freedom to be ourselves and not to be looking somewhere else, to stay within the country and completely... We could be wild, we could do anything, because actually the rest of the world didn't really care. They weren't looking to us, and we didn't need to be looking to them. So we were looking with each other in this country, and we could do wild things because nobody really was saying, oh no, you can't really do that. But we could just go, yeah, we can. We absolutely can do whatever we want and create something completely innovative, handmade, but with a group of wonderful people, and we really care about what we're doing.
Where did that confidence come from? Because to be making something that is so different to what anyone else is doing and so outside of trend must take a lot of chutzpah. Where does that come from?
That's with each other.
We had each other, and we didn't care. We didn't care. Nothing else mattered. We had each other. We could walk in the bush. We could get inspiration from this country, and it was an extraordinary thing because we didn't. We really did live in a bubble, and we just
that
created,
bubble did grow bigger.
Yeah, but we created.
You
from
created
that.
the bubble.
Yeah.
And we. It didn't matter. No one was doing what we were doing. I mean, Vivienne Westwood was over there with her punk, and you can see from our clothes there is nothing that was being done anywhere that was like what we were doing. And that's why someone like Anna Piaggi, when we finally went after 5 years, we went over to Milan and
in 1977.
Yeah, and we met Vernon. After well, we won't even talk about the beginning of the year because I was in Granville. Linda had her issues. We had an amazing life-death experiences, both of us, 11 days apart, 1-1, 2-2, 1-8, 2. This was all Linda and numbers, 7-7, 1-1. It was just, but 1-1, 11 days apart, we had these two cathartic experiences. The end of the year, we're over in Italy and, coming out in Italian Vogue with the words of Anna Piaggi, fashion arrives from another hemisphere. She was enchanted by our clothes because she had
have 11 trunks of luggage.
I should hope so.
And we dressed up 3 times a day, yes.
But Anna
were the
and
catwalk.
Vern was so proud of me and then proud of me and Linda. But it was, honestly, Anna Piaggi was just absolute. She loved what we were doing. She thought the exotica of a Sturt's Desert Pea or a Waratah or Aboriginal art. She was just so entranced, and she gave us a beautiful big double-page spread and followed us and wore our clothes and was just enamoured. And that is something, because I'm telling you, in 100 years' time, you're going to look at, you're not going to be here, but the children of the children of the children will be here, and they will be looking at this woman called Anna Piaggi going, where did she come from? And then, they'll do the same for the two of us. But it was timing, and our bubble went to Italy, and my God, there was one dinner where Karl Lagerfeld's boyfriend, on the Ken Scott, all these amazing fashion people. I can't remember all their names, but just all of the fashion who's who.
It was the Milan-Paris week. We went to Milan, Paris and New York for the fashion weeks.
Yeah.
And
well, they were all standing on the tables cheering us when we walked in. And then when we went to Karl Lagerfeld's black party, we left because it was very black. And I won't tell you what was happening in the amphitheatre. You
can't just say that. You've got to tell us how.
I will not tell you what went on in the amphitheatre. But there's a reason. Anyway, we won't go there.
No, we don't go.
Someone buy Jenny a glass of wine later and ask her about that. We're sitting here in front of a case in point. You're living your art in front of us, both in what Carla has captured here in these beautiful portraits and also the way that you're dressed today. This is your artwork. For you, Carla, you've painted so many people before, particularly for the Archibald, and you've been a finalist 4 times for Dan Sultan for a beautiful portrait of C.W. Stone King, of course for Jenny and Linda. When you're about to go in and paint someone and tell their story through an image, how much and how deep do you get into their backstory? How much do you want to know before you see them in the flesh?
It's a really good question. I try and get as much as I can. So from anything that's out there on media or books or interviews or whatnot. And with my sittings are more contemporary. I don't do heaps of sketches or anything like that. I see my camera as the sketchbook, but it's more about hanging out and spending time, because I absorb things on an energetic level and I read energy on that. You know, I'm quite sensitive, and sort of my connection point is by spending time with people. And yeah, so I think some people have a philosophy about, well, you should only really do a portrait of someone, particularly for the art prizes. There's lots of different theories on who you should paint and how close and how well you should know them. I think that we're all ever evolving anyway, and I think that to cross paths with someone, you know, considering that there are so many different people in the world, I just trust my instinct when it comes in. And yeah, particularly that moment when I got the invitation from Mel to go to your knitwear launch, that was a big penny drop. And our sitting was quite special in the sense that I ended up staying at Jenny's property up in the Blue Mountains, which is just spectacular. It's breathtaking. In her beautiful Glenn Murcott designed, which is your space now, you're in that one. And I'd actually just finished reading Jenny's bio the night before we met up on the veranda for our meeting, and Jenny's, to go through your evolution, but also to be at your house where there'd been this sort of whole evolution with Danton and the history of the way, you know, I remember walking up to you and saying, you asked me how I slept, and I said, well, I actually just finished your bio last night at 2:30, and you said, good, now you know this is a good starting point. And then we went into the bathroom, and Jenny, you know, you started layering what, you know, the painting is. And it was just beautiful just seeing you do all of the layering and the styling. And then we did our moment, which is when something shifts, I feel, when there's a recording of that, there's sort of crystallises. And then parallel with you, Linda, I stayed with you at your place, and we had a lot of time together and did some fabulous op shopping.
Bendigo.
Oh, it was very satisfying.
That's an integral part of a portrait.
But the same process is that when we went into that space of getting ready for the portrait, you then pulled out all of your amazing layers and the necklace, which you've got today on as well. And and then we had the conversations as the sitting happened. And they're very, very special moments for me. That's sort of, it's like a crystallized moment. And then I go away and I think I'm internalizing it as it's all happening, but then I sort of sit with it. And
because that's the thing, you need to then paint it. You're spending time and you're taking these photos to capture a moment, but then you need to put that energy into creating what this is. So how much are you locking in that experience and sort of hoping that that fire burns in the period that you'll be painting these works?
Yeah, well, I think there's little rituals that we did, both separately. We went, Jenny and I went on a beautiful bushwalk and down to the falls at the bottom of an incredible fall near your Govetts Leap. And
right down the cliff face.
Oh, it was spectacular. And we then meditated on a big rock together and collected ochre, which I ground down. And so there's Blue Mountain ochre sort of dotted through. It's not going to, the colour's not there, but the essence of Jenny's home's there. And then Linda and I went for a beautiful visit to the great stupa in Bendigo, where you do a lot of work with the Buddhist temple there. Yep. And we went and collect ochre from there, and that's sprinkled through the background of your black. So there's ritual, I think, that I incorporate in, so that I know that when I look at them, there's these things that I weave in. And the symbolism. I always ask people to wear something that, for them, there's symbolism, and so when they look at the portrait, it holds deeper. And I think that all feeds into that, what comes back out. You know, it's quite a collective process, even though I do the actual work at the, yeah.
Well, do you feel like you were moving into a different space when you sat for Carla, Linda? Did you sense a shift in the room as Carla did?
Well, it's amazing when you have your portrait painted to go through that process, and to me, and especially for me, after seeing the moment I saw Jenny's portrait, I think I messaged her to say, you have captured something really beautiful that is a Jenny that I know, because there's many Jennys, like we have many faces because of all the different things that we do, but it was amazing and so beautiful for me to see the essence that she captured. So when I was asked, it was just an amazing thing to be, I could get so emotional. Amazing to be included in that and have the understanding of us together, which we have, and for it to be captured by someone else, by Carla, is really amazing.
That idea as well of having many different faces, and particularly as public figures, there's always, you know, the public persona, and there's of course a private persona, and sometimes several different private personas. When you're sitting for something like this, which is so intimate but will be hung in such a public way, what side of yourself do you show?
Well, that's for us, we can think that we might be showing something, but the artist is the one who captures the magic or the essence of their connection. That's the difference between a photograph or me thinking, oh, I'm looking like that, or something. You know, there's just something, it's almost invisible and magic that gets captured. That's her hand and her vision and her essence that she's captured like that with the combination.
I remember having a conversation with you, Jenny, that was really pivotal in that question, is that when we met on the veranda, you were in your, you know, cocoon sort of home, you know, I think you even had been meditating and you were in that space. And you said, so what do you want for the portrait? What do you want from me, from the portrait? And there's me, and then there's the public me. How do you, and I thought about it, and I think that selfishly I wanted to do a lot of colour, so I think I was hoping, but I actually energetically knew that I wanted the highest vibration that we could lift, and I think it was through the colour. But I tried to get that other essence. I tried to get more to it than just.
Yeah, but what you got us to do, Carla, is because you're such a in-tune cosmic goddess woman, you know, with two other goddess women, you actually relaxed. We were relaxed. Yeah. We were on the same page. We were absolutely intuitively and just spiritually connecting. Yeah. And it just was sort of seamless, you know. I mean, you came into our life, or you came into my life, and I felt comfortable. And, you know, it's a big thing. You're never sure how someone's going to paint you, and it was seamless, which is why I feel that there's the talent, but there's also this connection I feel that I had with you, and feel very much more so actually sitting here with you. It's a beautiful thing, and I mean I don't want to get too flowery about it, because it's beyond words. It's women doing their thing creatively and just being in tune. This sort of beauty comes out.
Thanks, Jenny.
Here, let's give a round of applause for Carla.
And no one else has ever thought to do something like this and to capture what is between us like this as well. But Carla, thank you.
My pleasure.
I think we're all getting the sense just through this conversation, and I certainly have through reading about both of you and through knowing Carla, that there's a sensitivity to the world around you, both humanity and particularly with the environment, and a deep spirituality that runs through all three of you. On the flip side of that, do you ever kind of feel sensory overload? I'm probably asking the wrong people given how you're dressed. But do you ever feel like, that there's so much happening in the world, colour, movement, energy, vibrations? Or do you sort of ride that wave?
You've always got to just bring it back to your strong beliefs and not get caught up in what others are doing, because we have this way of living. Live simply so others may simply live. I mean, it's on everyone's... It's Vivienne Westwood talking about the environment, all these people that, Claire Press with the recycled movement. Well, darling, I buy a new pair of shoes because they wear out. My clothes, I have been wearing the same clothes for 35 years. I add a little bit of Romance Was Born. She's got Romance Was Born shoes. Yay! Look at them.
I bought them for
Stick
today.
your leg up.
I know, we're amazed.
Put up. And that's what Linda and I have been doing for the last 35 years. I mean, we live simply. We have a rich inner world and a rich environmental world that we love, we treasure. I look out onto this extraordinary beauty, the Grose Valley that's 350 million years old. I look out every morning and I feel completely blessed that we are living in paradise. Has anyone seen The Human Flow, Ai Weiwei, and the story of the refugees? The most amazing documentary. We live in paradise and we walk our talk. Over to you.
Yeah, the thing about what we're wearing is even all those years ago, we said we care about what we're making, we love the cloth, we try to get, local made. They're made to last. When we were asked about, well, what's the fashion for next year? It'll be like, no. We still love all these images. We still love the Waratah and we still love the bush, and it'll just be a little bit different. It's not something you get and then forget about it, because lots of friends still have things. They're either worn out completely or they're handing them on to the daughter or the granddaughter or to the niece, which we all do, and because we love it and we love them to be wearing out and wearing like that. So,
and then patching over the top of them.
And then patching over the top, exactly. So it's always been that philosophy which I think people forgot about a lot, and it's coming back, which is...
Our time has come again.
Yeah,
Jenny, you alluded to this before in terms of that period where you ended it with a two-page spread in Vogue, but the start of that year was very different. And there was a lot of emotional and spiritual changes that were happening with the two of you. And this is this is public knowledge. You survived the Granville train crash with your daughter. For anybody who doesn't know, it was a horrific train crash in Granville. 83 people died.
Yep, 212 seriously injured.
Yeah, and you were in one of the carriages and managed to walk away with your daughter Grace, just a scratch on her forehead.
No, it's the first carriage that brought the bridge down, which split in two.
And that was the carriage you were in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the stanchion right behind my seat. I could have been Frida Kahlo if it was anywhere closer than just behind my seat. Yeah.
And at the same time, or around that time, Linda, you were coping with this intensity of being in the spotlight. Everything was... And the two of you, I mean, I wouldn't say you're an introvert today, but in life it seems like Jenny has taken the extrovert role and you've taken the introvert role.
Sorry.
But it's highly extroverted. But you...
I don't know where that ever came from.
I used to say shy and she'd just look at me and say, I'm not shy, Jenny. I just speak when I choose to.
I was going to say...
But sometimes you couldn't get a word in.
There's that too.
Yeah, there's that too.
But did you understand at the time what each other was experiencing, given that you've had this, this cosmic connection and you were both going through this? Did you understand what was happening with each other's worlds?
Tell her about your dream.
Which one?
The one where you wrapped me in.
Yes, because I was seeing the pixies in the clouds and the faces in the trees and the cliffs and...
They call it a breakdown, but it was actually a breakthrough. I won't say any more.
Yep, so actually at that time of the Granville, a few weeks before that, I always have lots of dreams. Carla's been telling us about her dreams too.
Wow.
So,
Hers are
Oh, don't tell the dream we were talking about backstage.
No. On that.
So I'd been having dreams about, in particular one, of being squashed and not being able to breathe, and then I dreamt about Jenny and wrapping her in rainbows, because rainbows at that time was really huge for me, a lot. The colours of rainbows, and I think, you know, seeing things that I'd point out to other people and maybe they could see them, maybe they couldn't. So I was learning how to deal with issues like that, to maybe keep a bit more quiet about how much do you tell people that you're, you know, seeing visions and different things like that. So I was actually in a beautiful little home having a rest and doing some art therapy in Woollahra, and being told, oh, but we think you're one of the worst cases we've ever seen, because I was talking about acupuncture, yoga and colour therapy, which in 1970, you don't discuss things like that very much. So it was like, ooh, she's really a bit odd.
We'll give her shock treatment, we will.
Yeah, but I didn't have shock treatment, which I was very lucky. But other people, that was a situation that you could be in those early days when you're discussing different concepts and theologies and things like that. So, and then there was what happened to Jenny.
And I got the early train because I was coming down to visit her in the home. So her visions were real visions, and people call that madness. Excuse me. She's a visionary. I'm sorry, but I get very emotional now.
Yeah, because all these years later, many years later, over time, we've been able to
40
go back
odd
to those
years
days.
to unravel the depth of our relationship on such, and through Tibetan Buddhism, you know, when they talk about the rainbow body that you attain, these great masters attain when they die. Their body shrinks and the room is surrounded in auras of rainbows. It's such an extraordinary thing. So, you know, for us, rainbows, they're beautiful colours, but it's this thing that's it's just something that you see, but it's not really there. That's the essence of understanding what life is really, that we think we're living in this world, but it's really an illusion. And that's the depth of where we are now as older women, as old as 71, well, I'm 71, Linda's 68. And I can tell you it's a beautiful thing that our colour is you know, the ultimate rainbow. It's so beautiful to be at this age and to have that wisdom and to have stayed deeply in friendship. And for this darling woman, Carla, I'm sorry that, you know, I'm talking too much or I'm talking, but you know, to have captured us with these paintings, it is. We live in a beautiful world. I don't want to be, you know, on any bandwagon, but we have to treasure it, and we have to let people who aren't as privileged as us, we have to let them come into our countries and look after them, because that's all there is left in this world, in the end, is love and compassion.
Jenny, in your biography, which is brilliant, by the way, it's just here, A Big Life. It's a big book for a big life. You say towards the end, when I'd met Linda, my talent had been bubbling beneath the surface. Linda brought it to life. She was a blazing comet of creativity, and proximity to her fanned my own imagination. I think we've seen that through what we've been talking about over the last hour, but beyond what you created together, both creatively and personally, how much did your meeting change you as individuals? Do you think that you would be very different people had you never met?
I would not. I think, look, of course I would have gone on to do this or that. Okay, cool, whatever. But meeting Linda was really such an extraordinary meeting for me because, you know, she's a great teacher. She's got a great way of bringing out, I've seen it with so many other young creatives, she brings out the most creative energy that you have got in your body. And being with her, I don't know what, you're going to ask her the same question, I hope. Yes. But she gave me so much energy, and just being with her within that energy. And I say it very humbly. You know, she's an extraordinary being to be around, and there was such a purity to our vision together. But I really feel that she fanned. What did I say in that book? That was good. Whatever I said.
She fanned your imagination.
Well, she did.
Yeah, and then it hit me back too, you see. Yeah. So the same, to be so inspired by Jenny, who I could dress up and we could walk in the bush. I had my camera in my hand and we were together in that environment, in that beautiful space. But knowing each other, it's just an unknown knowing as well between us. But, you know, without Jenny, I would have done something different. It wouldn't have been probably as flamboyant, because there were the two of us. It had a huge impact. And because we dressed each other, we loved each other, and we laughed together and loved together, and just the whole creativity was pretty awesome.
And we had this beautiful little thing called Grace, who was
That's Jenny's daughter.
She was just so divine. She was dressed up in couture from the time she was born. She was over fashioned by the time she was 18. She's now a literary agent. Love Zan Rowe. But it's just, when you think of the fun that we had, you know, with this dear little, well, she'd die if I called her a doll now. But she was just so much fun to dress up, and it was a bubble of beauty and joy. And
I think respecting our sameness, but also highly respecting our differences, which is something between friends that can cause fractions and different things like that. But that didn't really seem to happen with us, just because of the honour between the both of us as well.
Honour.
And then even understanding the creativity that came in the year of 1977 was when we did go to Milan, Paris and New York. We could have stayed there. Everybody thought, well, look, they're not going to come back. They want to stay in Paris. We didn't want to stay in Paris. We had to come back to our country, knowing that what we were doing was amazing, and let's get back to work and just get more colour and do more wonderful things, because we know we can, and together. And then even many years later, when we started to be working a little bit more differently, there was still that respect and friendship, and still loving what each other did, but just not being so like twins with each other.
Carla, you coming? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jenny.
There's this picture of, me not being here after Granville and Linda having shock treatment. I mean, you know, we survived it, and we really are great survivors.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we do look pretty good while we're surviving, okay?
You look fabulous.
Can't help that.
Carla, how much has your life changed since meeting Linda and Jenny?
Oh, I don't know how to quantify that one. It's just, I've been able to open a part of myself. You know, the confidence and the connection and the bubble, it's just like I've just been able to feel that protection of feeling quite strong about doing sort of permission to use colour and permission to keep going forward with in a direction that, you know, you know, can bring up a lot of fear to put yourself out there and to do things that you wouldn't normally do. But it's been an incredibly powerful thing to have been able to not only have time but develop deeper connections and to get the nuances between. I feel very lucky to have moments of conversations between the three of us and then individually that are continually informing my sense of myself in not just as a woman or an artist, but an Australian artist, having a connection to the country that it's been this incredible explosion of very, very magical proportions. And I'd say it's changed this life for the better, but I don't think this is the only life that I've met these two before in. I feel like we've crossed paths before somewhere along the line.
Yeah, there's definitely a strong feeling of destiny on the stage here. Do you feel it with me as well? Am I part of the club?
Well, one of my dreams was that you had to host this, so you're very much a part of it.
And you're wearing Romance Was Born
It's
booties.
destiny. I'm part of the group. I'm part of the band.
That's how people used to really want to be in our orbit, I have to say, when Flamingo Park was bubbling. They just wanted to be part of this.
Yeah.
They just wanted to be, wear the clothes and, there was an energy in the shop that was just, it was so electric all the time, and there was always mum, and the Thursday nights when our clients used to come in and Linda and I'd be both there and she'd be fitting them and, oh my God. Look, it was so much fun for 10 years. I mean, just think, the Beatles only had 8 years together. We actually got 10. It was, people, they cry. I mean, I was telling Carla that we've got this beautiful girl called Gail Boglione. She has Petersham Nurseries in Covent Garden in Surrey in England. When she sees Linda and I together, she just bursts into tears. I mean, she was Linda's muse and my muse.
She was in our very early fashion shows, because the models were all not models. They were close friends or performers, and some were models, but really different, not just family as well, became family.
Mm.
I think so. People, young, all these young, beautiful people but Gail especially, she just bursts into tears. She just gets so overcome with emotion because it was such a fabulous time of her life, our life, and and we have beautiful memories.
The legacy of what you've done is seen through fashion still today, like you say, 10 years, but a lifetime of influence across Australia. And on that note, these two beautiful paintings, which we're kind of standing in front of right now, or sitting in front of, which is a bit rude, but you will be able to see them. They're going to be on show on that wall there for the next month here at the Art Gallery of Ballarat. I want to open it up to the room, but before I do, can we please give a very big round of applause to Carla, Linda and Jenny. Did anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? We've got a microphone up here if you want to... Just down here.
Thank you very much, ladies. I'm just wondering, that beautiful energy that you talk about a lot, I'm just wondering if that's partly come from that bravery that you have all shown to stick to your own message and create your own work. I wonder if that's partly why you have such a joy of life.
It's completely why.
Mic drop.
And you.
Well, originality seems to be a guiding principle in your work.
And having the confidence to be yourself and believing in yourself.
How do you see fashion today in that context? Do you think that there are many people who are doing their own thing and have the confidence to do that and are able to do that today compared to in the 70s, in this golden period when you were creating?
Well, we've both worked closely with Romance Was Born, with Luke and Anna, and I think they have that confidence.
Yes, against all odds, because they are really creating art to wear in a very, very fast pace compared to what Linda and I were doing, and they've survived. And I'm doing a collaboration with them at the moment, and Linda did a collaboration with them which was just extraordinary. I mean, if you can just go back and look at the work that those two... Oh, they've got their new book, Romance Was Born's book's out, and there's a lot of beautiful photos that they did with Linda. But it was easily one of the great milestones of their life, working with Linda.
But did we answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. But she together we gave each other this extraordinary confidence, yeah, and it needed to be the two of us to do that.
It would not have been as powerful because two people wearing glasses, like we did match. We were twins from the minute we met, and we could have been twins in the past at some point because the connection has been so strong and timeless and endless as well. And the fact that we both had funny vision, and wanting to dress up, and it just seemed sort of really normal for us.
Are there any other questions from the audience?
No, we've said it all.
I'm that good. I've asked all the questions. Down the front here?
And I'm sorry if I'm asking something you've already spoken about.
That's okay. I might just wait till you get the microphone so everyone can hear.
Carla, when you first chose to paint Jenny, did you immediately think you would like to paint Linda thereafter? How did that...
That's a really good question. As soon as I started to realise their connection, the thought just kept on feeding, and it just kept on tapping me on the shoulder. Because every time I enter the Archibald, I say I'm never doing it again. and then the deadline sort of creeps up, and then I go into this flurry of and it was a no-brainer. And then as soon as that process started, it's just opened this portal that we end up sitting here, and so I'm glad I listened to that tap on the shoulder.
The fact that you've painted so many people for the Archibald suggests, though, that you are drawn to spending time with people in your art and not just painting, animals that you have a connection with, but it's a different kind of connection, or butterflies, that you're actually spending time in a room with someone and becoming part of their world. That seems to be quite a draw card for you.
Yeah, I think I've sort of realised that some artists need to be in the studio, as all the time, and they feel really odd if they're away from their work. I need to go into the studio and I service a body of work, and then I need to get the hell out of there and live life. And then I realised that the portraiture element is that it's like this awesome combination of both, because I get to share it. It's an experience I get to share with. It's a really deep connection, and actually not all. It's not a given that you have that deep connection with your subject, but I'm very lucky with Jenny and Linda that it obviously is that. But I think I've really enjoyed incorporating portraiture through just that feeds something in me. It's really, really important.
I think painting portraits is extraordinary. I can't paint a portrait. I can paint the colour bit, but for someone, and Jenny can, but for someone to paint your face and capture you is extraordinary. Yeah. It's something else altogether. And to have met Carla, and from having seen her portrait of Jenny, which I told you I loved, but to have, and then to come together, do the photographs, spend a few days together like we did, and then for her to go away, and then this is me. This is us when we see it. It's extraordinary.
And those hands, Linda's hands are so brilliantly
Yours are so
captured.
elegant, Jenny.
Yeah, but you've got the hands. They're just the hands of someone who sits with the earth. I love those hands.
Well, I did look at... Yeah,
I know.
Well, thank you very much for painting our portraits.
Thank you very much, Carla.
That feels
Thank
like a
you.
good place to end.
Really, Dan.
A big thank you to Jenny Key, to Linda Jackson, and of course to Carla Fletcher. Carla just opened another exhibition full of colour on Thursday night. It's happening in Collingwood as well, if you're going back to Melbourne, at the Tinning Street Gallery.
Oh, no,
James Macon.
James Macon Gallery. So if you're anywhere near Collingwood, well and truly worth checking that out and seeing just how much of an influence Jenny has had on her and that explosion of colour. And of course, these two beautiful portraits will be showing here on that wall there over the next month here at the Art Gallery of Ballarat. Thank you so much for being such a beautiful audience and for sharing in that conversation. I feel very honoured that I was able to be part of that. Please give them a warm hand once again.
All I can see is shining faces in the audience and all these bits of designs that I recognise from time past. Oh, thanks everyone. It's really lovely.